Have you ever been invited somewhere, maybe a party, a dinner, or an event, and the moment you got there, you immediately wanted to leave? Like you just knew this event is not for me. Or maybe you said, this isn't what I thought it was going to be, and not in a good way. From a customer acquisition standpoint, this is exactly the reaction you do not want your ideal customers to have. Think about it. You spent all this time inviting them into your brand. But if the moment they arrive, the reality doesn't match the promise, they're gone. So today's episode is all about making sure that does not happen. It's about getting your house in order, making sure that the promises and the hope that you communicated when inviting your customers in match the reality of the experience you deliver once they show up. So to get started, we need to talk about bait and switch. Most of the time, whenever we think about the term bait and switch, we get the image of some kind of scammer that says something really sexy to get you in the door, like they are offering a $10,000 car for only $100 just to get you to come and check it out. But then once you get there, that too good to be true deal is often sold out or no longer available. So the person is quick to offer you something else, say a car for sale for $3,000. But of course, that's not what you want at all. And if you knew that that was the offer from the very beginning, you probably never even would have gotten off of your couch. Now, and even though in this example, the person who was doing the bait and switch was doing it intentionally, too often brands engage in similar type of behavior even when they don't intend to do so. Here are a few real life examples to illustrate. A brand puts a stock image of a Black person on promotional materials for the event, but there are no Black speakers at the event. Or similarly, a Black employee is featured in promotional materials for your company recruitment materials, but that person is the only Black team member you have on your team. Another example, you publish a lot of Spanish language ads on social media and other Hispanic-owned media outlets, but your website has extremely limited materials in Spanish, and your social media team only responds to comments in English. Another example, you take the time to create accessible fitting rooms in your stores, but those fitting rooms are filled with boxes and clothes, so people who need to use that accessible fitting room can't. Another example, your brand uses alt text on all the photos you use on your website, but the text used isn't about describing the photo, it's used for SEO purposes instead, not the intended original use. And one more, your brand creates an allergy-friendly menu, but in reality, it's a cumbersome document that's more than 10 pages long that is really hard to read and digest. What types of menu options will be appropriate for someone with dietary restrictions to consume? Now, the list of examples goes on and on and on. And did I mention that all those examples were real life examples and consumer complaints that I've heard? So consumers, especially those from underrepresented and underserved communities, they get frustrated. They feel like an afterthought. They think that you did the absolute bare minimum to try to win them over. And as a result, they've left with a really bad taste in their mouth because of an experience that just didn't seem to match the promise of the invitation that you sent to them. These types of experiences cause friction, and friction kills your conversions. So how do we avoid delivering this bait and switch type feeling so the people that you want to serve feel seen, supported, and like they belong with you after taking the next step forward with you as a result of an invitation that you've given to them? Focus on these three things: customer intimacy, authenticity, and customer experience. All right, let's get into the first one, customer intimacy. First, we have to remember the fundamental question that consumers are looking for an answer to when they're going through the process of considering whether or not to move forward with your brand. And that question is this brand for someone like me? Your job as a marketer is to answer that question for consumers quickly and clearly. But it becomes really hard to answer that question in a meaningful way if you only know the people that you want to serve at a superficial level. For instance, I can't tell you the number of brands that I have come across whose point of view is that all they have to do to attract and retain Hispanic consumers in the US particularly is to translate their materials from English into Spanish. It's not. While Spanish speakers are part of the equation for Hispanic consumers, I remember I had to let one client know that the majority of people who are of Hispanic heritage in the US actually speak English. It was a small detail, but one that had a major impact on the brand's strategy and the effectiveness of the work that they were already doing. Customer intimacy is not optional. Well, it's not optional if you want to make good use of your marketing resources. It is critical to move beyond assumptions, to move beyond stereotypes, to move beyond the superficial, to really understand what your ideal customers, especially those from underrepresented and underserved communities, need and want from you. Whenever you do, you'll have a much clearer picture about what you need to do to quickly and clearly communicate this product is for someone like you to the people that you want to serve. So let's get back to that customer intimacy issue that one of my former clients had. All of their efforts to reach Hispanic consumers were focused on language. But whenever I did an audit of their overarching brand and customer experience and did some user testing, I discovered that lots of their Hispanic speaking ideal customers were looking at the brand's content in English. And those English language materials did not have the Hispanic representation that those ideal customers needed to see in order to feel seen, supported, and like they belonged with the brand. They did not see what they needed to see to know that the product was for people like them. Their lack of cultural intelligence in that area led them astray. The more information you have about the people that you want to serve, the deeper you know them and understand them, and the better relationship you have with them, the easier it becomes to design products, services, experiences, and communications for them that make them feel seen, supported, and like they belong with you, and that your product is for people like them. The deeper degree of intimacy that you have for the ideal customers that you want to serve, the better equipped you'll be to pull the right levers to acquire them as customers. All right, so the second area that you need to focus on is authenticity. So authenticity is where a lot of brands fall short, and this is especially true when they're trying to engage consumers from underrepresented and underserved communities. As a result, their attempts to engage, especially in the customer acquisition phase, often feel forced. So a common example of what we've seen is that brands are starting to include people from underrepresented and underserved communities in their marketing materials, but their internal policies and practices do not align or do not support the communities in ways that are meaningful to them. Case in point, remember that whole Bud Light fiasco? Here's a quick refresher. The brand sent celebratory Bud Lights to Dylan Mulvaney to celebrate her transition. Dylan herself was celebrating 365 days of girlhood on her social channels, and Bud Light wanted to be a part of that. Tapping into influencers is a really smart way to invite people from specific communities, especially those who are underrepresented and underserved, to be your customer. Now, we covered this in the last episode in this series. But when backlash came from a group of consumers that were not in support of the transgender community, Bud Light abandoned Dylan and, in essence, the transgender community. They didn't protect her, they didn't reach out to her, they retreated from their inclusive outreach and invitations to the community, and as a result, Bud Light lost a lot of business as many people boycotted them for the way they handled the situation. So it felt like the brand didn't really support the transgender community at all or in any meaningful way. It just seemed like something that they were doing in their marketing to get more of them to buy their beer. Your actions can't be about just doing or saying the right things outwardly to get more customers, especially those from marginalized communities. So if you decide that you want to serve these communities and you want them to be your customers, you've got to support them and stand on business for them through and through. And that means throughout your organization, when people are celebrating you for it and whenever they're not, and of course in everything in between. If you are inviting people to your party, especially people from underrepresented and underserved communities, your responsibility is to protect them while they are there. Consumers, especially those who are from marginalized communities, need to know that you have their back and that what you say isn't just lip service. The burden of authenticity falls completely on you. Now, the consequences of not being all in on serving and supporting people from marginalized communities that you have chosen to serve and engage with from a marketing standpoint could be very far-reaching in terms of consequences if things don't go well and you don't support them after initially reaching out to them. All right, so the third focus area that we are going to focus on today is all about customer experience. The experiences that you deliver along your customer journey serve as signals for people who are going through it that communicate whether or not your brand is for people like them. But too often, brands deliver inconsistent experiences. At one part of the customer journey, and this is is usually at the customer acquisition phase. A brand will communicate this product, service, or experience is for people like you. But then whenever the consumer, and this is typically people from underrepresented and underserved communities who experience this, whenever they take the next step forward with the brand, they encounter experiences at various touch points with the brand that unfortunately communicate, actually, this brand isn't for you. And it's frustrating, and it feels a lot like that bait and switch that I mentioned earlier. For instance, I worked with a client one time that was interested in adding some accessibility features to their product packaging and in-store displays. Doing that would have helped the brand attract more people from the disability community. But my feedback to the team was that they needed to think about the entire arc of the experience that they were delivering for people with disabilities, not just whenever they were considering whether or not to buy the brand's product. Now, after doing a high-level audit of the brand's overall customer experience, it was clear that the brand had not woven in accessibility into other parts of the customer journey. So think about that party analogy. You've taken the time to invite a person that you know is vegan, you even put images of vegan dishes on the invitation, but when the person shows up, the only vegan things there are to eat are a vegetable platter. All the other guests are eating hot food in abundance, but the vegan guest has just that one thing and it's super blah. The guest probably is going to feel some type of way and probably won't want to return to any other types of events that you have, and they probably even warn their other vegan friends to steer clear of you and your invitations. Every invitation you extend to your customers sets an expectation. From the moment they arrive, they are constantly evaluating whether or not they should stay and whether or not the experience that you promise is the one that is being delivered to them. So take a moment to walk through your own brand's experience from the very first message all the way through the final touch point and ask yourself, does this feel like what we invited people into? When your promise and your delivery align, that's where trust grows. And trust is what keeps your customers coming back and bringing others along with them. And if you're not sure where the gaps in your customer experience may be, that's exactly where my inclusive growth audit helps you uncover. It's a guided process to help you identify where your brand's promise and experience might be out of sync. And it helps you find those things out before it costs you any more customers. You'll find the link with more details about this growth audit in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who you know who's working on building a brand that's inviting customers in, and of course, wants them to stay. Until next time, remember, everyone deserves to have a place where they belong. Let's use our individual and collective power to ensure more people feel like they do. Thanks so much for watching. Talk to you soon.